Hello everybody. It's 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we have scheduled our webinar, which is called Managing Traceability and Recalls Tools and How You Prepare. So as a waiting list, we are going to welcome you slowly, so people start to join the webinar. And then we're going to be on our way to start the webinar. So we'll wait another 30 seconds. And while we're waiting, I'll introduce you to all the rules and regulations and that we are going to talk about. So we are Nomics, and Nomics, it's a food safety platform. And what we do is we help companies implement and maintain, mostly automate their food safety system. So that's what we do. So you have your food safety program implemented. Then after it's implemented, you have so many paperwork to manage. Well, what Nomics will do is we'll remove all those paperwork and then just automate your food safety program. So it's easier to do. Right. So what we've decided this year, 2022, we decided to provide you with a lot of value. That's why we have this type of webinar. And we want to give you all type of subject that you can relate to, whether it's sanitation. The previous one was sanitation. We can do pre-op. We do, premises. And this one, it's on the recall and traceability side. So I'd like to introduce you to Richa Sharma, who is a PhD, and she has a lot of experience in the field. Before I introduce you, I'll let Richa go ahead with the presentation. I also like to say, please don't wait at the end. So we have an hour, but within that hour, we want to give us the opportunity to ask and answer all the questions that you may still have. So you'll see a Q&A box at the bottom side of your screen. And please, if you have questions, just write your questions there. Before you write your questions there, you have the chat box. I'd like to know, we would like to know where you are connecting from. So just write down where you're connecting from. It can be Toronto, Montreal, New Delhi, Dubai. So write where you're connecting, and then we go ahead. Richa, you can go ahead.
Hi everybody. Sorry for a deep voice. I'm just a little under the weather today. So yeah, as Tangway said, that I am doing this webinar on traceability, managing traceability and recalls, and what are the tools, and are we prepared enough for the incoming traceability rules. So if you're from this, so before that, I'll just introduce a little bit about myself. I'm currently working with a fresh produce company. They are the farms, they are called the Sandy Shore Farms. They produce fresh vegetables such as bell peppers, onions, and asparagus. Our asparagus season is right around the corner, just in few weeks. So that's what I do. In the past, I've done my PhD from Iowa State University in agriculture and biosystems engineering, with food science and food safety being my focus of the study. Also, I worked on different grain products in the United States. Also, I have worked on some ready-to-eat food products for various companies in my past. So to start my presentation, we will do a very brief introduction on what traceability is and how to do management of recalls and how traceability comes into play when there's a recall, several tools and techniques, and is traceability really the road to recall preparation. We'll discuss all about that. So I'll start with the basic introduction of what traceability is. According to me, it's about identification of your supply chain, what all different processes you have in your supply chain, FDA has given a term called critical traceability events. This identification is of those critical traceability events. As I move forward, I'll discuss about what CTE are. Then the next point is the ability to trace and track. That's Bioterrorism Act, which says one step back and one step forward. That definition comes from that. You should be able to verify or quantify traceability on maybe a low, medium, or high parameter. I will discuss later what do I exactly mean by that. Then interaction, you need to identify what supply chain participants are interacting within your supply chain and how much information they're ready to share, and then do some effective documentation. So why we are so worried about traceability in today's time? Because recently in January, FSMA or FDA proposed a rule 204, which says that this is a new era of smarter food. And for that, they have laid down a smarter food safety blueprint. And why did they do that? Because they wanted their public health, or they wanted less number of recalls in times to come, an easy way to be able to detect those recalls if anything occurs. So the term traceability appeared in the agribusiness sector in the 1990s when ISO standards recognized it. There is ISO 2007 Traceability Act, which gives you an architecture of how your traceability should look like. Other than that, I would like to discuss about a food traceability list, which the FDA has released, which lists some of the foods that need to perform some traceability activity in their existing supply chain. And I have heard that they are proposing a new food traceability list that would include components like fresh produce industry or maybe farming industry to be included to do some kind of traceability. I think that's really commendable and interesting, because if we go back to products like packed salads, there have been a lot of recalls associated with those. So I think FDA has that in mind, and they will be releasing a new proposed food traceability list that would have some of the products that have previously been exempt from the scan. So I think why traceability is important. Why do we think it's important? Because it helps us to do a quick identification. Because if you remember, in my previous slides, I talked about identification. That means you identify the critical processes throughout your supply chain and assign some documentation to that. Or probably I'll use another new word, that's key data elements. I'll talk about it later, what that means. Traceability is important to lessen the public health risk, because if you have a good traceability system in place, either you'll have, I can't say you'll have less recalls. It would be easier to detect or identify much faster if you ever had a recall. But there's not much study done on if it would reduce recalls drastically. But yeah, it would be it would be a barrier to occurrence of some of the recalls that may occur if you didn't have any trace forward or trace, like if you do not have those tracing and tracking components. So for sure, it enables the product recall to be implemented effectively and with increased efficiency, because it's like a firewall on your computer. So it works a similar way, and it's a proactive approach. All the new standards that have been coming in, for example, FSPCAs, PCQI training, they all focus on being proactive rather than reactive, and traceability is for sure a proactive approach. Okay, wait a minute. Yeah. So why traceability is relevant? the starting point is the Bioterrorism Act of 2002. So each point along the supply chain would need to account from where did your food came from and where it's going. That one step up and one step down is essential. What's the Bioterrorism Act of 2002 said. And determining the source, determining the source and the cause of any reported adulteration, the food fraud, food defense things also somehow indirectly gets aligned with a profound traceability program. If you want to do, like, I want to be able to have transparency all across my supply chain, then you can essentially do that. It prepares the food supply chain to be more prompt in response to any public health emergency. So what's traceability management is? Traceability management is tracing backward and tracking forward. It looks really simple in those two words, but from my point of view, tracing backward is your response if anything occurs, and tracking forward is an assurance component that comes along with your traceability management program. So as you see in this supply chain, I have this really simple supply chain with supply chain participants, starting from raw materials. By raw materials, I mean the seeds which the farmer or the grower procures from a seed company, then it processed, then it harvested it, then it gives on to the processor, then the distributor has it, then it goes to retailer and finally reaches to the consumer. So it looks really simple, but identifying critical traceability events at each point is really important. So for example, if you're looking at the farmer and grower, for them, the critical traceability events would be where they're farming. Is that particular land being used for any product which can be subject as an allergen? So allergen is another important component when we talk about food safety and quality. So for example, if it's an onion farm and that onion is going to, for example, say pasta making, that onion is going to pasta sauce making, but the land on which the onion is being harvested a year before, that land was used for, say, peanuts, then you need to, there's a chance of that allergen to get carry over. So you need to study all those critical traceability events and those small data elements related with it. So full history of the farm. That's why we have a supplier onboarding program, which many of the industry, I'm sure, follows, and wants from their farmer that what land use is there, adjacent lands that has been used, for example, say GMO products or maybe some potential allergens. So those are the small critical traceability events that I have been talking about, and the data associated, like the allergen information, those are the key data elements that we need to know to create that transparency across the supply chain. So this is another small example of how a grain supply chain traceability system would work. I've taken a grain supply chain example in which a seed company, it starts from the seed company, goes to the farmer, then the elevator procures it, elevator sends it to the processor, then retailer, then distributor. Now the processor can process it in different kinds of product. For example, you can use, say, wheat for semolina production. Maybe you can make a pizza dough flour out of it. So you can have those different applications as a processor. But what are the basics? So a seed company should have the breeding practices, what variety, what type of wheat they will be, that particular seed would be generating, and is it GMO, non-GMO, authenticating those claims? Is it, for example, some people may ask for kosher or some other kind of certification or claims. Then how it was handled, how it was delivered from the seed company to the farmer. Is the farmer responsible? So creating all those documentation along the line as we go down the supply chain. For example, I'll take up the example of a semolina processor. He would have to comply with a certain food safety regulation. For example, if he's SQF certified, he had to comply with those food safety regulation. And for that, he need to go back to the elevator and farmer and ask about their processes. Were their farm subject to any GMO product? Or for example, if elevator is procuring seeds from say 10 different farms, then the processor needs that information. Was any of those 10 farms had any GMO seeds? This is just one example that I'm using that comes to my mind right now. So there are other factors as well, and document that chain of custody from where the elevator has procured, or elevator gives a letter of guarantee to the processor that whatever grain we are sending to you, it's all practiced under safe food handling or something like that. So it's basically a combination of what activity or event is happening with information or with data. So what are some basic traceability functions? I would say it would respond to your security threats because it creates some transparency along the supply chain. It would address food safety and quality issues definitely because it identifies some critical events, the events that are critical to food safety and quality, and assign some key data elements to each critical traceability event. So that documentation of chain of custody is definitely there. Then you have, or if you're practicing traceability in a processing area, then you have all the documentation regarding production activity, when a lot was created, when what labeling did a bag of say semolina contains. All those production activity records, information will be there. Then it meets your customer's demand, what a customer wants. Safe food with some transparency or labeling, or for example, if it's a semolina flour, a customer may demand the grain size to be this much, or the particle size to be of a particular ratio. Then it assesses risks. There's promptness for addressing new issues. Definitely it would achieve regulatory compliance, and brand protection is another one. Address sustainability and carbon footprinting. This one's a little jiffy right now. You can use traceability for some carbon footprinting, but it's an indirect advantage that you can use it for. So this is some of the tools and techniques I thought I would share with you. These are from Normex's website. I think Tangway told in the beginning that they are a software company. I will just reiterate that they do a lot of food safety and management software work. And I think tools like this, which centralize your supply chain and at the same time create a decentralization by removing the component of what a SQF practitioner or a food safety coordinator do at your facility. This synchronizes and manages your processes in a much better way and eliminates the, I would say, eliminates the man errors a person can do. So the next software which I really liked on Normex's website was a food safety incident report. And why I'm saying this, because as I'll show you the methodology, how to implement traceability, this software can be a lot handy, can come a lot handy, because you can create a traceability system for your supply chain based on your past incident reports. And based on, so for example, your company had several incidents of, say, having rubber in your supply chain. So rubber, there's no detector. Metals can be easily detected. But for things like small rubbers or small, like maybe machine rubber coming out from the belt or something like that, you need really good physical inspection. So for example, you had those incidents really often in your facility, and you are like reporting in your CAR reports or whatever incident reports you have at your facility. Now you can create a traceability program around that problem, around that issue, stating that this is our corrective action, and like work around those issues to create a critical traceability event and assign a corrective action that there will be from now on, say 2 people on the end inspection belt to overcome this issue, and then ultimately it would reduce your incidents. So that's how indirectly traceability could be used to reduce some of the incidents. So some other tools and techniques for tracing or tracking would be barcoding. Barcode is a very popular method. Now, RFID is another technology. Some of the meat processors use this. They put those RFID chips into the carcass or the meats. For that, they can be detected. Some paper tags or brands on cattle can, so this is just an example. Some tags are used on cattle to identify the cattle if they roam around. So RFID tags is an automatic way of identifying different food products. They have been used in the meat industry, but there is definitely more application that can come through it. Another form of technique, because I come from a fresh produce farming background right now, so we can identify different lots based upon the latitude, longitude, or even the altitude coordinates on it. So this is a way, and you can color code different lots, stating that, like, if you are too much, like you want to trace each and everything about your farm, then you can do those color identification and like uniquely identify that. For example, I did this for one of the grain companies. They wanted to know how high their wheat would grow in a particular lot on the land. So doing those very specific tracing or tracking. So another tool or technique, I would say, that's my very own paper that's published in Cereal Chemistry. It goes by the name of Vulnerability Analysis Using Evidence-Based Traceability in the Grain Supply Chain. That's why I talk a lot about grains, because that was my research work. It was like NIST's idea to do it. It was a current industry problem. And what I basically did, we had those verbiage like critical traceability events and key data elements, but no one knew how to mathematically quantify all those things and bring these two things together as a traceability plan. So in this particular research, we identify certain reasons of recall. We pulled up all the FDA recall data related to grain and grain products. And the top reason for recall we found was microbiological presence, that's Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. There were 54 cases of recall out of, I guess, 108. We studied a total of 108 cases from the year, I guess, 2012 to 2020, I guess, in a span of 8 or 10 years. So identified why those recalls happened. Probably either there was a misrepresentation of the temperature kill step, or there have never been a monitoring on temperature. There were lapses in storage, handling, and the dispatch container or the dispatch carrier was too dirty for the products, and the product got directly exposed. Those were some of the reasons, and we, based upon those reasons, we identify the critical traceability events could be processing, at storage, at handling, dispatch, and maybe at receiving. Somebody just threw it on the floor and the floor was infested, or probably their pest control program was not in place. So we assigned such cases a criticality number of 5. So the scale was based from 1 to 5, 5 being high importance, 1 being low importance. So the second reason of recall was drug carryover. There were like a lot of cases of thiamine low level of thymine in cat food and presence of pentobarbital in most of the feed. Those were another cases related to the grain and grain industry, like grain industry related products, because the animal food industry also uses a lot of grain ingredient. So there were 39 cases related to that. So criticality number 4 was assigned. Then mycotoxin was also another reason that would lead to a recall. Based on various research, it led to a loss of around $1.66 billion for corn and wheat industry. Like they lost the crop in like for mycotoxin, or probably mainly aflatoxin or ochratoxin presence. That's why we assigned a criticality number of 5. And I think this is a huge study which assigns those criticality numbers. And then there's a frequency number. Frequency number means if you have 5 or more supply chain participants, then your frequency number is 5. That means you need to take care of your supply chain a lot more, because you have more participants to like take care of. And then there is detection difficulty number. Detection difficulty number relates to key data elements. So we created a noble gas, like a noble date, like a noble set of data elements that's at most required for getting 100% traceability. And we then counted the number of missing data elements, and the number of available data elements would be the ones that we evaluated. And if like in the noble set of data elements, if 5 were the requirement, and that particular supply chain participant only was able to provide us 2, that means their supply chain is highly vulnerable and will not be able to effectively trace or track anything in that situation. So based upon those numbers, those scales, we multiplied all these 3 things and created a vulnerability scale for a supply chain, that your supply chain would fail if you will go and evaluate traceability right at this moment. So this paper elaborates upon that. This is also a good tool if you want to consider making a traceability system. You can definitely read out that paper. It's if I go and explain the entire thing, then it'll probably take an entire day, but to explain some little portions of it, yeah, I can answer questions at the end so that it's clear what I mean. So traceability, it's definitely not a piece of cake because you need to identify a lot of critical traceability events and assign data elements to each critical traceability event. And while you're doing that, you need to understand what your business objective is. Like if you are in food safety and quality, then you need to like identify each processing event and assign data elements. If your objective is like branding, we want to like be able, our consumers should be able to like scan that code and trace where our products came from. Then we need to like modulate traceability according to some of these goals. We need to create a lot of processing maps, a lot of visual tools to be able to see the supply chain on one particular page and assign some traceability events. And of course, document what information is easily available, what information is as required, and what information is definitely needed to have that kind of tracing or that transparency. So another model, or I would say I created this model to discuss about what is traceability, what exactly, how can we exactly perform traceability, and is it a road to recall preparation? So the first step, identifying activities, identifying events performed by each supply chain participant. And second is documentation, assigning relevant and necessary document to each critical traceability event, and then listing different traceability objectives, like what objective goes for your organization. So this is another interactive tool which I thought was like really useful. This is Government of Canada's website. They have a traceability interactive tool. So you enter your information, what your business does. Are you importing? Are you exporting? And based upon that, it would calculate how much traceability is needed by you. Like if you are eligible for a one step back, you can definitely try that on to see. Now, another component is what data input should be recorded. You'll have a lot of data in your processing facility, a lot of data at your receiving, a lot of data at your shipping end, and how much is related to traceability and how much information we can effectively detect. So basically, this is just small little example. Like doing a product identification, you need a product code. If your facility has a product code, product description, then a shipping date. This is an in-process example, like what information you need during the processing state. This is just one little chunk of the big supply chain. Quantity, how many number of pallets being shipped, how many number of lots gone. Excuse me. And this is just an elaboration on what the objective is and what description is. Location means where is the physical product actually located. So that's basically the country of origin kind of thing, where many companies ask you that. Then next is chain of custody. Who controls the product and who owns it? So these are basically some of the objectives and some of the description. So this particular verbiage, this particular slide, I directly took from the Safe Food for Canadian regulation, the interactive tool that I showed you earlier. I filled in all the information and they at the end gave me this definition of what traceability requirements apply to most food business units. If you import or export food, if you distribute or send food products across provinces, across territorial borders, if you're a manufacturer, processor, treat, preserve, grade, store, packager, label, and growing or harvesting fresh fruits and vegetables. So basically, I'm not going to read out the entire thing, but by this slide, I want to convey that though they are saying that certain food products are exempt from traceability requirements, but if you read that verbiage, then most of the industries do fall under the CFI's traceability requirement. Even a small fresh produce manufacturer who is just doing some value-added services for the industry. So this particular slide is from one of my papers. So this is a different paper, which is called Developing Guidance Templates and Terminology to Support Multiple Traceability Objectives. In this paper, I have given out a step-by-step methodology to how you can make your own traceability plans. So I used an example of a grain supply chain, of course, and I divided a particular traceability objective, say chain of custody and documentation, into two different groups. So group one is the identification of what product this traceability is applied to, which was raw corn. And group two is what kind of identification we need. That is, for raw corn, we need location of the farm, location of the elevator it's going to, storage at farm and elevator, and transformation. By transformation, we mean raw corn from different farms being commingled. So commingled becomes first degree transformation or primary transformation, or raw corn being grinded into say 200 microns size, then that becomes a third degree kind of transformation. So there's a whole lot of examples in there, and I have attached some guidance templates. So this is a guidance template example. Like these are the traceability requirements or a traceability template that would look like for a processor of dry grind corn ethanol. That's the example I used in that paper, but if you go through it, there is a way to easily customize it according to your processes. And if you're considering writing some traceability programs or traceability plans for your own company, and you're finding difficulty how to do it and what things to consider, you can always contact me. I'm all for traceability and I'll customize it for you. So this particular study answers what exact documentation you would need, what exact information you would need if you are a dry grind corn ethanol processor. So this is just some of the templates out from the paper. So what's mock traceability and mock recall? So I did make a mock traceability and recall for the company I'm currently working with. So for that, I had the policy and the frequency defined that we'll do twice a year or something like that. You need to define that for your own company. There's no guidance or recommendation on that. It's as per your plant, and as per your plant is subject to risks and other things. So conducting traceability exercises 1 or 2 times per year, that's what I will be doing at my facility. That's what I think is best. And mock recalls probably no less than once per year. So you can define those policy and the frequency for your own facility, and what those mock recall traceability and recall plan should contain. Like, it should have information about who is conducting it, what's the customer emergency contact list, who you need to inform when a recall occurs, what's the name of your facility, where it's located, who is the CFIA contact if a recall occurs, what is the product code which has been identified, who is the person who is like the list of emergency contact in your own facility. Is there any recovery rate, or is there any testing done on your product before a recall was identified? Did anybody had ownership of any tests or record and you received it later, and that's how you, like, what's basically the reason of recall, why you're having that recall? Then if it's a class 1, class 2, or class 3 recall, what kind of it is, name of product, lot code, and who is the manufacturer, who is the supplier, if the recall started at the back end. So another component for traceability, which I have been talking a lot about, is critical traceability events, key data elements, effective communication, and transparency on information sharing. But here you need to be really careful. How much information is the customer want to share with you? What's their discretion? And or even a supplier wants to share with you, if they even want to share that particular information or not. For a recall plan, you need to know who to notify, identifying the lot. Is there a hold or release on the lot? Did you isolated that lot? Having a corrective action way forward, like from here, where are we going? So to sum it all up, I have those 5 whys you need to answer while making your mock recall and traceability plan. You need to have those answers for what, when, where, why, and whom. Those are the easy 5 whys, easy to remember what exactly you need to do. On the other side, I just took this small little example from GS1's standard traceability code. I took a small example of reception or storage. Let's discuss storage here. So we need to know an accurate inventory control. What's the GTIN? Because GS1 gives GTIN. Some products have, some may not have that. You may have simple lot batch codes that could be the location, date, quantity, and where it occurred. So to sum it all up, traceability requires a structured approach. It's not a simple thing. It's a result of what we are doing in the supply chain, or what we want our supply chain to be. It's a proactive approach. It reduces Recall, you can validate that by doing a lot of recall studies and associating that with economic benefits. Like if your facility has that kind of like structure, then you can do a lot of mock recall studies and associate like how much you lose when you have a recall and how much you gain if you do not in a particular year. There are some studies like that. It strengthens the supply chain network. It helps you to rely on your suppliers, and your customers in return rely on you if there's effective information sharing. For example, a supplier onboarding program is one little way to like do some kind of traceability. It can be applied at all stages: production, processing, distribution, receiving, transportation. It's supply chain specific. There are specific involves if you're not. So traceability cannot be generic. It should be specific to have that effectiveness, I would say. And some products and the ingredients may be more challenging than others, but there's not a standard traceability program you can apply to any product. You need to customize it based upon your processes. So here I'll stop talking, and if we have time, we can talk about questions and any suggestions anybody may have.
Thank you, Richa, and I think that was a great insight and many information on traceability. Now is the time for questions. We actually do have a lot of questions, by the way, that I have in front of me. So I'll help you out with the questions. So we're going to answer the questions together. And before we go ahead with the question, we have a poll that I'll launch right away just to get to know you a little bit and to see where you are in your system management. I just launched the poll. Please respond, and then we go ahead with the questions. So we'll close the poll now. Let me share the result with you so you can see what do we have. So in terms of result, do you have a food safety program in place? So 86% said yes, and 14% said no. If so, which one? Most of the people connected said 86% HACCP program, then 43% GFSI, then we have 14% CFIA, and 29% other. We have 14% with none. Do you currently use technology to help you with your traceability? So we have 43% that said yes, and 57% that said no. So that means we have, we have a really good, balance here. Now, in terms of the question, I'll go ahead with the question from Dubai. So quinoa seeds has traces of wheat seeds. Processor has procured quinoa seeds in 25 kilo bags and packed in small pouches. Example, 300-gram pouches. Processor failed to identify the traces of wheat seeds while packing, and now the product is in the market, of course. And now we have a customer complaining that our customer is allergic. That one customer is allergic to wheat. Now, after consuming quinoa seeds, he's suffering from allergic reaction. Yes. Now, how can you trace back? That's the question that he has from Dubai. Richa, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think this is a really specific question, and I would say that the processor is the processor having a supplier onboarding program or not? Because if this, so a processor is procuring probably from a farm, which are packing those quinoa seeds in 25 kg bags, and then if you are the processor, then you are packaging into smaller pouches. So I would say the processor should have a supplier onboarding program, and and if they do not have a supplier onboarding program, at least they should have information about what the farm is processing apart from quinoa. Are they processing wheat? And if they are, do they have a product carryover or a cross-contamination procedure in place? So all those small components become a part of your traceability plan, and you can create a supplier onboarding questionnaire that would hint at questions, create questions like, are you processing or producing wheat near or adjacent to the same farm you are giving us quinoa? And I think that would become your corrective. Like corrective action would be isolating the product from that particular supplier and then re-evaluating it for wheat presence by sending it to the testing laboratory. And your preventive action could be following a supplier onboarding package with any new supplier you take on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I want to even add to that is if we know a consumer had an allergic reaction to it, and then we also know that there's wheat seeds, we know that for a fact, chances are you will have to recall the product. So you don't want to play around with allergic reaction. People can die from it. So if you have these facts and the product is already out, you will have to initiate a recall just to be on the safe side from your consumers. So and that'll be your corrective action, because that's the next question that he had. Question: can we trace with invoice number only? So instead of lot number, can we go and trace with invoice number?
So just if you'll do it just with the invoice number, then you'll have to like pull up all the information about the product using it. Sometimes some BOLs just have the invoice number. They don't even put the name of the product. Then with that, it becomes risky. Like you have invoice on your BOL, but you don't have any other information. So instead of like using an invoice or a BOL, use a COA. COA is a certificate of analysis, where you write the lot numbers, batch number, date it has been produced, date it has been shipped. That would give more information, and it would be less hassle for you in like tracing something.
Great. Thank you, Rita. Next question: how many mob traces should we perform every year?
So I usually do 2. For my own facility, I usually do 2 because like once every start of the year, like few months as we start, and once every mid-year. That I think is the good way or a like effective way to do that. Like it's recommended once. You can also do 1 time. It's not a like 2 time is not a hard and fast rule, but with 1 time I feel there's not enough validation or verification I can do. If I do 2 and the results are almost the same, then I feel confident in my process.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. And I agree with that. 2 is 1 is the minimum. 2, it's a good idea to do because it will also help you practice even more. So you can do 1 with the product and 1 with packaging material. Why not? Because you want to make sure that your packaging material, you can trace that too. So next question is, that's a good one. What will be a great selling point to my executive to implement a traceability program? Because we are trying to implement that, but it seems they're not interested.
That's a very good question, I would say, because traceability would give you a way to manage every documentation you have in your facility. So it's like whatever documentation you have in your facility, it would give you a way to manage it more effectively, and there would be less mistakes. I don't know if I don't wish that on anybody. If you have had any previous recalls and you were like bombarded by FDA or maybe CFIA for that matter, and you have that all paperwork coming at you and they asking questions, if that ever happened to you, then I would say you can talk to your executive and say that we can simplify that much more by using a traceability system.
Thank you. And one thing that I can add is just the selling point will be show them the first question that we had today about the wheat contaminated. And there was an allergic reaction because of the contamination by wheat. Show them that story and they might think twice, because that means if you have a lot of production out, you can have many allergic reactions to it. So this will be very damaging to your image. So that can be good.
And yeah, another thing I would add here is the great selling point would be FSMA's traceability rule 204. They have the rule. And if your product is in their food traceability list, then if you're in Canada, you may have to do it in some months or a period of time. And if you're in Canada shipping your products to US, then you have to do it under the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. So the traceability rule 204, I think that would budge, like it's meant to create some ripples.
Yeah, yeah. So the next one, imagine we've received a potato shipment container and we open the container, it's completely rotten and decomposed. Now, how can you trace back?
So what I usually do is whenever I'm getting any shipment, I think you should be doing at your facility too, that you have a COA being emailed to you. And that COA should have information like what the product looks like, what are the specifications of that product, and when was it shipped, and how long it has been in transit. All that information I have on my COA, and I require my supplier to send me all that information, because nobody wants to open up a truck or a shipment and see everything rotten and falling out of the truck into your receiving dock. So that's the last thing anybody would imagine. For that, ask for all the spec sheets and which date that product was processed and which date it was shipped, so that you have an idea. So for me, it's fresh produce. Fresh produce decays and rots really easily within a period of 5 days. So that's why I always ask for the date it was cleaned, peeled, and processed, and the date it has been shipped, and the time takes to reach my facility. So I have all that documentation beforehand from my supplier, which is the spec sheet and the date of manufacture, date of processing, and date of shipment.
Very good, very good. That's precise. And the last question that I have here is, how does Nomex help in traceability? I think that one is for me.
Yeah.
Well, Nomex, it's a food safety management software, and it will help you not only with traceability, but with all the automation for, regarding your food safety tasks. Traceability is one of the food safety tasks. You have many of them. You have sanitation, pre-op, etc. So for traceability, it will automate your process from receiving to, if you do manufacturing, so from receiving to storage to production, and to automaking to shipment. So you have to have, as Richard alluded to, you have to have approved suppliers in place, and you have to be able to source from those suppliers and then monitor your lot numbers. You decide whether it's lot numbers or invoice number. I mean, you have to be able to trace it back, and Nomex helps you with that. So instead of doing that manually, you have technology that helps you. So you minimize the error, because you always have, when you do manual, you always have human errors, and that's just part of the process. Now you eliminate the human errors because of technology. So yes, that's how Nomex can help you. But if you want to have more information, you can contact us. We have our email address there. If you want to have more information about the webinar and on this topic, you can also contact Richard. So I think you provided your email address, right, Richard?
I can really quickly write down here.
Yes, we'll send them an email. Yes,
Okay.
write your email address, and then we'll also send them an email so they can contact you if they have more information or if they want to know more details. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Richard, for your expertise. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next month.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate it. I had a great time.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.